Okay. All right. So, again, thank you so much. Again, my name is Rebecca Measley. I'm a lead meteorologist with the National Weather Service office here in Portland. And we're going to be going over a lot of things today, but I'm going to try and keep it a little on the shorter side to leave ample time for questions and conversation. So, a little bit about me before we really start to dive in. I am from this area. I grew up in Oregon City, so I'm a born and raised kind of Portland metroer. My husband actually went to Jesuit high school, so we're kind of from this area through and through. I was always a science lover all through high school and middle school, and I knew that I wanted to go into the sciences in some capacity. Initially, I thought I wanted to go and be a biology teacher. Then, when I entered college at Portland State, I started off as pre med, thinking I was going to be a forensic pathologist. I was very much obsessed with CSI at the time. And then, my freshman year of college, I realized, you know what? I don't think I want to do that. I don't think that I want to be in that mindset all the time. So then I transitioned into pre law after taking some environmental science courses. So I was planning on getting a degree in environmental science with a minor in sustainability, and then going to law school to be an environmental lawyer. However, my winter trimester of my senior year of college, I took a meteorology class and I was living with my parents. And I went home and I said, Mom, Dad, I've completely changed my entire career path. I want to do something totally different. Oh, and they don't have a school here in Oregon for this. So I'm going to have to move out of state. And they were like, okay, well, can we finish this first degree first? And then we can talk about what you're going to do. And so I then took 2 years off of school and then went to the University of North Dakota, which is in Grand Forks, North Dakota. It is the second coldest state in the country. And I got my second bachelor's of science degrees in atmospheric science. And there I focused in aviation and wildfire meteorology. I graduated in May of 2017. And then in July of 2017, I started my first job with the National Weather Service up in Anchorage, Alaska. So I went from the second coldest state to the coldest state in the country. And that was such a wonderful experience. And then I came back to Portland in 2019. So, looking at the National Weather Service, we are a federal agency. So, we are nestled under the Department of Commerce. So, the Department of Commerce is kind of like our grandma. And then we have our parent, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. I jokingly, we like to call it the National Organization for the Advancement of Acronyms because I think we have probably the most acronyms ever. It's so many, it's obnoxious. And then there's the National Weather Service. And within the National Weather Service, there are 122 forecast offices, and we cover every single state and every territory, including Guam, Samoa, and Puerto Rico. We have offices all in those areas. We have 22 central weather service units, which are specific weather forecast offices that are directly located with the FAA. So they're helping a lot of our aviation partners. We also have 9 river forecast centers, and we actually have one here behind me in Portland, the Northwest office. And they're responsible for modeling river rises and when things are going to flood. And then we work hand in hand with them to issue warnings. We also have, national headquarters. We have the headquarters, and then we have our warning prediction center, the climate prediction center, the storm prediction center, all of which have their own niche areas. We have our aviation weather center, and then we have an Alaska version and the volcanic prediction center up in Alaska, and then the tsunami warning centers. There's two. So we not only deal with weather, water, climate, but then we're dealing with tsunamis and earthquakes and avalanches and all of these different components. And ultimately, all of those things come together for our mission. And our mission every single day, I show up to work and we think about our mission, which is to provide weather, water, and climate data, forecasts, warnings, and impact based decision support services for the protection of life, property, and the enhancement of the national economy. And any person that works for the National Weather Service, they call federal employees civil servants. And I think our mission statement really embodies that civil servants kind of mindset, and anybody who works for the weather service like lives, breathes, and eats this. We love what we do because of our communities. So let's dive into the actual job. So, a little bit about me, kind of the early stages of me, and then weather service. So, what exactly do I do as a meteorologist? Now, I know for me, when I introduce myself and they ask, a random stranger says, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And I say, "A meteorologist." They say, "Oh, what channel are you on?" The answer is no channel. I work for the federal government, and our job is a little bit different than maybe some of the outward facing meteorologists that you're used to seeing. So, at the National Weather Service, as a meteorologist, we're staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We always have at least two people in the office on really active weather days, like the one pictured below. Sometimes we'll have seven people in the office because our workload is so great. There's always someone here because weather doesn't stop. It doesn't care that it's a Sunday. It doesn't care that it's your birthday. It doesn't care that it's Easter. We are always here, always working. And because it's a 24/7, 365-day operation, we cycle through, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit, but we cycle through our operations. So, for example, I'm working the day shift this week, and then I have Saturday off. And then I come into work Sunday night at 10 p.m. and I work until 7 a.m. for the next 4 days. So we have kind of this rotating shift to make sure that someone is always here and no one gets truly burnt out. So our day or night or evening, depending on your shift, all kind of looks similar, but we just have different components of it. So the first is we always are doing a spin up and a briefing. So we will come in and the previous shift will say, "Hey, Becca, this is what happened overnight. These are my concerns. I think these are going to be your tasks of the day, the big bullet points. If there's anything that has changed from shift to shift, maybe the models have completely changed where they're going, and we have to go, what the heck? Why are you doing that? That's what's kind of covered in that spin up and briefing. We're then communicating with partners, and you'll hear me say partners a lot. When I say partners, I mean emergency management, elected officials, power companies, water companies, even as small as a rural fire department in Detroit, Oregon. Those are all of our partners. So we're collaborating them through a lot of the day, but especially in the morning and during inclement weather, it's a lot in the morning. Then we go into the actual forecasting process. Now, our forecasting process is pretty in depth in that we have over 100 different models that we're looking at. They're called ensembles. So we look at 100 different runs of like 4 or 5 models, and then we look at a big model that takes into account all of those values and plugs it into one. And then there's a bunch of the higher resolution short-term models. Some last for 7 days, some last for 36 hours. It's all over the board. But we're looking at each one of those and it takes different slices of the atmosphere. So for some, it's the temperatures at the surface. But then I can also use the same model and look at the temperatures at 5,000 feet. And I know through my education how those two things interact to create the environment that we're looking at. So we're taking all of this data and we're putting it together into a puzzle. And it is a really creative process. Yes, it's technical, but it's a lot of problem solving and looking at things in a different way. And maybe, um, my coworker Trina sees one thing and I see another, and we're like, oh, hey, wait, those two things go together like this. That's exactly that forecasting process. And then we're issuing all those hazards. So I want you to think in your mind when the last time you received a warning, watch, or advisory was, whether it was a severe thunderstorm warning or a blizzard warning, which I don't think we've had any of those in your area yet. Um, but those are all issued by us. And then Weather Watch and collecting of data. So the National Weather Service, we have all of the official climate sites for the US. And all of the data that we collect goes into a national and even international database, which is then used to create forecasts, and it's ingested into those models. So the data that I'm collecting, literally with a ruler and a bucket, it's very high tech, is then put into international models and used around the world. And then the weather watch part. That's, I think, the fun part. Sitting there watching radar and watching to see if you get a severe thunderstorm and how big the hail is going to be, or your wind, or maybe we're getting calls from our storm ready spotters that are saying, hey, I have 5 inches of snow and we weren't expecting snow that day. The weather watch is the fun part for sure. So here are just some photos of some of the different components. So, we've got that weather watch with that radar. We have different partners, like I said, one of which is the Columbia River Bar Pilots. Now, NPR did, or OPB, pardon me, did a wonderful segment on these people. They are like the coolest people. They're mariners who will take a boat or a helicopter out, climb a rope ladder onto a barge, and help navigate it through the Columbia River Bar, which is where the Pacific meets the Columbia River because it's known as the graveyard of the Pacific. And they help navigate it through. So, coming through our bar is about $2 million an hour. And so we have a responsibility and we connect with them, working with them to keep them safe, but also determining, do they need to shut it down and therefore like halt the economy essentially. Um, but kind of looking around the room, we're watching for things like water spouts. And then in that lower left hand corner, that's an emergency operations center that we deployed to during the Palisades fire this last January. So after those big fires ripped through uh, LA and Palisades and Santa Monica, we actually deployed meteorologists down to LA to provide weather support for recovery. We deploy to wildfires, and then we actually have, it's kind of an intern program. It's called the ACE program. I don't know what it stands for, unfortunately, but it is for high school juniors and seniors that during the summer, they essentially come and volunteer with us, and they do research or they learn about it. And this is Orion. He was our ACE student a couple years ago, and he ended up going on to Princeton and just an amazing kid. We have our electronic technicians, which are definitely the unsung heroes of the National Weather Service. They keep everything going, they keep the radar going, they keep our balloons launched. They're just incredible. I feel so bad when I have to call them on a Saturday at 6 a.m. because something broke and I need them to come fix it. We do launch balloons every day, twice a day, and you may have seen a little bit about those on the news, but those balloons are critical for collecting weather data. We've been launching them pretty much the same way since World War II, and the balloon data, it gathers temperature and humidity, wind speed, and wind direction, and then it puts it down into kind of this weird little mappy looking thing that then I can really determine what's going on in the atmosphere. So those are launched 2 times a day at the exact same time all around the world, and then that data goes into a big bucket and is used by everyone. I did want to point out over on the right hand side, kind of that sepia image. That is the original forecast office from 1890 in downtown Portland. And then the one right below it is where we are now. So we do issue a number of different products, and a lot of them are things that people may not know about. From TAFS, which is our Terminal Aerodrome Forecast, which is the official forecast that has to be used by every single pilot um, around the world, but especially in the United States. These are the forecasts that they're making go, no go decisions off of, and we're the official source of that information. My husband is a pilot. I always joke that if he makes me mad, I'm going to shut down his airport with one of these things. We also do our marine forecast. So, not just the land, but we forecast out to 60 nautical miles into the Pacific. And we do a marine forecasts. We have our hurricane prediction center, and then we issue watches, warnings, and advisories. And I always like to mention the taco example of a watch, warning, and advisory. And you may have seen these before, but we're going to think back to a few weeks ago when we're going to potentially have that big severe weather scenario that did not end up happening, right? So, a watch is when you have all of the ingredients gathered on the counter to make a taco. You've got the beef, you've got the beans, you've got the lettuce. You have the potential, but it's not together yet. That means that we have about a 50% chance of that happening. A warning means that the taco is put together, it is actively occurring or is imminent, and we need to take action now. And then an advisory is kind of like a nacho. It's still there, it's still a meal, but it's a smaller meal. So it's a little less impactful. Within the Weather Service, we also have very unique rules, and these are the ones, I mean, I'm kind of biased in that I love talking about. So the first are the hurricane hunters. So these are such courageous scientists. They actually fly into the eyes of hurricanes to gather data so that we can better model them, learn from them, and it's incredible. There's some videos on YouTube where media people have actually been in the aircraft as it's flying through the hurricane, and it's just like they're on the rockiest of roller coasters. They're just some of the bravest people that are scientists that I know of. So they're also members of what's called the NOAA Corps. So the National Weather Service and NOAA actually have our own uniformed service, and that's the NOAA Corps, and they do a lot of marine research. It's a great opportunity if you're interested in any kind of marine hydro research, meteorology, if you want to fly those airplanes, NOAA Corps. And then they have a role as an incident meteorologist. It's one that I am, and we're specially trained meteorologists, and we actually deploy to incidences. Our bread and butter are wildfires. So I get a 24 during the summer, I have a 24-hour call out. So I'm on call all summer long, and they say, "Hey, Becca, you need to be in Burns, Oregon tomorrow by 1600." And it's 6 p.m. And I have to pack my stuff and get on the road and go. We're there for 2 weeks straight, it's working 16-hour days, and you're camping. You're sleeping in a tent, you're using outhouses. So if you like camping and you like weather and you like looking at fire, an incident meteorologist might be the job for you. Our biggest thing is protecting firefighters. In fire, there's this thing called the firefighting triangle that has topography, weather, and fuels. And in fire, generally, the thing changing the most is weather. So we have a very critical role in keeping firefighters safe and helping operations. So it really is like the coolest job in the world. I love it so much. I could talk for hours on it. I'm not going to, but it's awesome. So, some other roles within the National Weather Service. We have our technicians. I kind of mentioned them. We have both IT and our electronic techs. We have hydrologists. We have tsunami forecasters. We have people who maintain our radars. We have the meteorologists. We have researchers, instructors. We have politicians and people who lobby on behalf of us. We have people who do modeling. And then we have international relations. People may not know this, but in the world of weather, we have what's called the World Meteorological Organization, which is a branch of the United Nations, and they set standardized policy for weather throughout the world. So, international relations is critical. So, what does it take to be a meteorologist? All right, you've decided that you love clouds and you want to do this job because it is so cool. And you said, Becca really inspired me. Let's do this thing. What do you need? So, in order to be a meteorologist, you do need a degree in atmospheric science, meteorology, or some kind of a related science with mandatory classes taken. And it's actually very explicit which classes you need, which is nice. There's zero guesswork there. Some people do have master's degrees or PhDs, but you don't need one. I don't have one. I don't have a master's or a PhD, so it's not necessary. But things that are necessary. You have a lot of math and science classes coming your way if this is something you're interested in. Public speaking and writing are actually really important roles that we have because we're writing discussions, we're writing to our partners, and we're doing a lot of briefings. We're briefing our partners, we're doing interviews, things like today. So, public speaking is an important thing. And then computers. Computer programming, not my strong suit. I can barely print to name in C++, plus plus, but having an understanding of computers is important. And the thing I want to point out about all three of these things, you don't have to be an expert. You don't. Anybody can be a scientist. You just have to have that knowledge, not expert knowledge, just knowledge. And to be a scientist, you don't have to be a genius. Just really remember that because it is really important. So, meteorology is a competitive field, but we're always looking for new people. And especially right now, we're going to have a lot of upcoming retirements. They did a big reorganization of the Weather Service in the 80s, and people that were hired then are getting ready to retire. So, we're going to see a big outflow of folks retiring. So, we're going to need some new people joining our teams. As in any job, set yourself apart with your hobbies, skills, languages. I wish that I spoke a second language. Those are all helpful. Really diversify your portfolio of things that you have experience in. And that's going to help you not only in this job, but in any job. So these are some of the like science and math classes that you'll take. A majority of them would be meteorology classes where you're learning how to actually do the forecasting process, but also like large scale meteorological phenomenon, small scale, um, just how to maintain radars and how to interpret satellite data. Then you do have to take statistics, calculus, which is Calc 1, 2, 3, and differential equations. That was the bane of my existence. I had to take it twice. I hated that class, but I passed. There was a lot of work happening in that one. Physics, and then again, computer programming or computer classes. And like I said, I was not an expert in all of these. I did not graduate with a 4.0 in college. I graduated with like a 3.2, and that's totally fine. You don't need to have it perfect in order to get a job. You need to have the requirements and you need to be just good at your job and passionate. And that's what's going to set you apart. So, wages, because we are a federal agency, all wages are set and they're standardized. So, when you join the Weather Service, if you're an entry level employee, we go by what's called a GS scale. So, it's a grade step scale. And you start off as a one. All people entering the Weather Service start off as a GS5, which in Portland is a salary of a little over $43,000 a year. One of the nice things about the National Weather Service is and federal government in general is each year you get a minimum of a step increase. So you get a little bit more money every year. But in the Weather Service, you not only get a step increase, but a grade increase. So for me, I graduated and I started as a GS5 making $35,000 a year in Alaska. That next year, I became a GS7, so we skip. So then I was making more money. So if you were in Portland, you'd go from 43 to 53,000, almost 54,000. That next year you go to a 9, then to an 11, and then you go to a 12. So right now and so on and so forth. As a lead meteorologist, I'm a GS13 and I'm in my first year. But you can see that it adds up pretty quickly, but we're very much earning it. It is not one of those jobs that you can just kind of sit and idly by. Um, you're earning it. You're working for it. And then being, in a federal agency, our benefits are really good. We have great health care. We get a 401k. We do have a pension, health, dental, and we do get life insurance, actually. So it really is a wonderful career. I love it. Again, we earn that money. You work you're working hard, but it's worth it in the end. So with the weather service, we have all types of people that work here. We have people in our office who have physical disabilities. We have people with autism at all levels. In some offices, they have folks who are blind and hearing impaired, people who are on full time crutches. So we can accommodate people of all ability level depending on the job. Some jobs, because they are a very physical job, like our electronic technicians, where they're like climbing up a radar ladder hundreds of feet in the air, you do need to have some physical capabilities for that. But for most jobs, though, we generally can accommodate it and figure out solutions. We also do have federal protections for reasonable accommodations. So, what's it like? Things that I love. The opportunities. Oh my gosh. I had the opportunity this year to speak at a national conference. The year before that, I helped plan the WMO, the United Nations meeting in Honolulu, and I traveled there and I got to meet experts in the field from all around the world. It was incredible and it changed how I wanted to move my career. There are so many, because there are so many different routes, you're never forced to stay stagnant. And some people, in some industries, they like change companies all the time. For us, it's just we changed routes. It's more of a ladder, or it's not a ladder, it's a lattice. So you can kind of move wherever. And for me, that was a life changing experience that changed how I want to do the rest of my career. We have a sense of purpose. Civil servants, I have a servant's heart, and we give to our communities more than what we receive. We are incredibly loyal to our communities. We fight for them. We sleep in our office when the weather is really bad and we can't drive to the office. We're here making a lot of sacrifices for our communities. We're always learning. Research is always growing, so you have that, but you're also learning techniques from other people. The job is frequently changing. No day is the same. And I love that. As like the Gemini in me, I love things that are always changing. So, the frequently changing nature of it. The people. Oh my gosh, I love my coworkers. I have a slide in a little bit, but like they're the best. The people of the weather service, by and large, are incredible, dedicated, brilliant, passionate people. Um, Probably the hardest part of the job is the schedule. It sucks. Like, there's no way to say it other than it sucks. The rotating shift work, because my husband's a pilot, sometimes we're ships passing in the night. Last month, I saw him for a total of 4 days, where it was like 4 total days together. But that's the way it is. But at the same time, because of that schedule, I never have to use leave to go to a doctor's appointment. I can go to Costco at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, and it's great. So you make it work no matter the schedule. The biggest thing is having that work life balance and the priorities. The other thing about being a federal employee is it's actually technically illegal to work off time. So I can't and shouldn't check my email when I'm off. So my work stays here. It stays here, and that's great. I love that. But yeah, my job's a little bit more unique than other people in my office. So the schedule is definitely the hardest. That's the biggest gripe. But if you look at that, that's one thing out of six that are that's really hard for me, because our job is just seriously like the best job. It's so fulfilling, so rewarding. I mentioned the people. These are current, former coworkers. I just think it's important to see the faces of the people. You may see our names on our website, on our products and the forecast, but like these are the faces of those people. It's a diverse group, all ages, gender, sexuality, and it's just incredible. It's a great group. I'm very lucky to be a part of it. And yeah, even, I think the piece for us is, even though we're working in an office, because there's so few of us, we're working so much together, and we're working the birthdays, we're working the Christmases together. You really do create a bond. I helped one of my coworkers pick out his engagement ring for his now wife. I mean, that's just who we become. So you do become quite a family. And I think that's a really special component. So there are other related careers to meteorology that aren't just with the National Weather Service. So obviously there's weather forecasting, but there's weather forecasters that work for power companies, for transportation companies, Nestle has their own meteorologists, which is weird. Um, I know, it's kind of bizarre. But all around, there's always weather forecasters. Um, Research is abundant. Oh my gosh, there's so much research happening, from understanding cloud dynamics to figuring out how we can work in the cloud. So much research. There's the broadcast meteorology side, which I know is sometimes the most visual side of meteorology. That is always an option. And then teaching. We need teachers, right? We need people who are passionate about the field and then they go in to educate others. So, some advice, some lessons that I've learned through my life. When it comes to your career, I know that you all are in kind of high school. Like I said earlier, my career aspirations changed a lot. My sister knew she wanted to be a CPA from the age of 13. I went all over the place to try and figure out where I wanted to go, and that was okay because I got to experience a bunch of different educational opportunities that helped shape who I am now. Take that risk. Uh, Never in my life did I think I'd be moving to North Dakota, but it was, from an education standpoint, the best decision I made. It wasn't very expensive, or it was less expensive, I should say. College is expensive. It was less expensive. I got to be really focused. My professors were incredible. My classmates, I still talk to on a regular basis. Find a mentor. And I know that this sometimes can be daunting. When you're 17, 18 years old, or in college, even, you look at the people that are where you want to be and you think, there's no way I can go talk to that person and ask them to mentor me. I had that. I am almost 34 years old. And 2 years ago, I had that moment. I had an opportunity to be mentored by a regional director, which is like one step below our headquarters director. And I was absolutely petrified to ask him to be my mentor. I wanted to. He was everything. Like, he's the leader I wanted to be. He has the opportunities that I wanted, the connections that I needed in my life. And my boss finally said, Becca, just ask him, for goodness sake. Just ask the man. And so I did. And it has been phenomenal. I talk to him on a regular basis. He's a sounding board for me and vice versa. So find a mentor and don't be afraid to ask the person that's where you want to be. Take courses now for college credit. Oh my gosh. If you have that opportunity, whether it's through the local community college or AP classes, take them. It is cheaper now than it will be if you have to pay for it later on. So take them now. It sets that good foundation and sets you up for success. Um, when it comes to college, if that's something that you're looking into, sometimes people don't like that I say this, but where you go doesn't always matter. I went to Portland State. Not many of my friends actually went to Portland State. And then I went to North Dakota, and none of my friends went to North Dakota. But I got a great education that I was able to really focus on that education, save the money. Could I have gone to a different university? Yes. But I knew that what mattered was that I had the classes, the degree, and the extracurriculars that set me apart. Don't worry about what others are doing. You're going to have friends that are doing all of these things. They think they know exactly what they're going to do, and they might. Don't worry about what they're doing. Focus on you and where you want to be and enjoying your time getting there. Have hobbies. You never know when they will come in handy. Little known fact about me, not many people know this, but I'll share it with you. In college, I did the most Portlandy thing ever in the world. I went to clown school and I was a birthday party clown. So my balloon animal skills have come in so handy. Whether I'm on a fire and I need to like make people happy, or in the office and we're pranking someone and we fill their entire cubicle with balloon animals, you never know. Your hobby might come in handy. Work life balance is going to be critical. Finding the time to just shut off and say, okay, I need to separate from work and focus on the things that matter in my life. That is important. As a meteorologist, my job is a little bit more of a trade. While there is options outside of weather forecasting that are viable and wonderful and very different, we all kind of have the same educational background in a way where we all could hop into one of those roles in some capacity. So it is more of a trade in that way. And trades are great. My husband is a pilot. That's a trade position. So I I don't want to undermine the importance of those kinds of careers as well. And then make those connections. Everywhere you go is an opportunity to make a connection. Sitting in these meetings and maybe something someone said has really clicked for you. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. I had a member of the public email me because everything about us is out there for people to contact us. Email me and say, "Hey, I've seen your area forecast discussions and have seen your last name. My daughter is really interested in being a meteorologist. Would it be okay if I connected you two?" Like, yeah, of course it is. Absolutely. So if you see something that you're interested in or just learning more on whether or not it's for you, make that connection, touch base with them. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's really, really important as you move forward. And especially in the world that we're in, a lot of the times it's who you know that's going to help you. So make those connections, build those relationships. And if that's something that you struggle with, which some of us do struggle with building those relationships, find a mentor who you trust who can maybe help work with you on that. And if it's maybe you're uncomfortable calling them or coming up to them in person, maybe just shoot them an email and say, "Hey, I saw your talk the other day and I really appreciated it." So just try to find those ways to build connections. So with that, I know that I went kind of fast, so I'm happy to answer any questions, whatever it may be. I'm an open book, like through and through. I talk pretty raw about anything. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And then here's also my contact information. So with that, I will pass it back to you all.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Students, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or feel free to jump in and ask the question. While we wait for students to ask questions, I have a question because I know
Yeah.
Oregon has a lot of microclimates.
Yes.
My desk is with a window, so I watch the weather and the clouds coming and going all day, every day. And, it could be hot and sunny, and then 15 minutes later, it's dark and it's pouring rain. How do
Mhm.
you kind of predict and navigate those microclimates and the ever so crazy bipolar weather that is always going on here in different parts of Oregon?
That is such a wonderful point. That is hard to narrow down. So, things that we look for trends. So, we're looking at kind of our big scale, kind of weather phenomena, high pressure, low pressure. We've all kind of heard that on the news, right? So, we know certain general things that happen when high pressure moves this way or low pressure moves this way. Then what we do is we look over time, and this is where that experience really comes in handy, is how does our area respond to that? So, for example, we know that in February, we're going to use February, for example. In February, if we have a high pressure system that sets up over the coastline for, 3, 4, 5 days, and we get an easterly wind bringing in cold air from east of the Cascades. And then we get an atmospheric river on top of that, moving from west to east, we will get snow in East Portland. Just East Portland. Just East Portland, and it won't stop snowing until the east wind stops coming. So, it's really about watching and paying attention and that weather watch component, and then there's researchers doing things all the time, and then some of our higher resolution modeling is able to pick up on some of it, but a lot of it is weather watch and learning from that experience.
Awesome. And then my other question is, how does altitude play a role in meteorology as a whole? I mean, we see Mount Hood has a ton of snow. People might say,
Yeah.
well, how come Hillsborough doesn't have snow? So how does altitude play a big role?
Yeah, so elevation is a really important component in that if we think about the atmosphere, I want you to think about like a layered cake. And as we move up, air changes. So generally, as an air parcel rises, it cools. It cools as it rises. And as it cools, it condenses. And so once it gets to a point where it's fully condensed, that's when we get the precipitation. Now, it may be that it's really, really cold, but it's dry. So we're not going to see it, which usually happens when you're at about 30,000 feet or so. But we could be at 500 feet and it's really, really cold. And then we get the condensing. So it really just matters on the air masses coming in. So much weather can be depicted and decided upon two things: temperature and pressure. And those two things are directly related to one another as well. So it's kind of piecing those things together. But yes, in general, thermodynamically, cold air is higher. Like our warm air rises, but the atmosphere is colder aloft. So there's that.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions in the chat. So the
Yeah.
first one is from Lucy, who asked, "Is there a way to have a schedule that is considered a bit more normal, or does it have to be variable?"
So it depends on your role. So my managers have a Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 or 8 to 5. As a forecaster, we in general are rotating. There's a lot of work being done right now, though, for our work life balance to be better. So, whether it's that we stop working midnight shifts or we're pairing up with another office, so we're working less of them, there's a lot of brainstorming and work being done to try to find ways to mitigate that. If it's not with the weather service as a forecaster, there's other industries. A friend of mine works for PGE as a meteorologist, and she's Monday or 5 days a week, but still weekends because she works in fire weather and does work remotely. So there's options. And eventually, at some point, maybe we would have a regular schedule, but not right now. And like I said, it sucks, but it's also really nice at the same time, especially, and this is like the insider treat, like treat here. If I don't want to go to things, my friends are like, oh no, we know Becca has to work randomly. So it's totally fine. She's not blowing us up. She just doesn't want to go or she has to work. So that's always a great excuse.
Yeah, that's nice. um, Desmond asked, "Where can I find more information about meteorology careers?"
Yeah, so I'm going to put in the chat the link to our NOAA NWS careers page. But if you're wanting to know kind of like what other jobs are out there in meteorology, a great option is actually going to LinkedIn, creating a LinkedIn profile, and setting up an alert that just says meteorology. And you'll get alerts for those kinds of jobs. And you'll be able to kind of see what companies, businesses, industries, locations are hiring, and you'll get ads for all different types. But if you're looking for weather service specifically, I would go to noaa.gov/NWS-careers. Um, that's where I would go. And again, I'm more than happy to help navigate as well.
All right. And then John asked, "After college, did you face any challenges when getting into
Mm.
meteorology?"
So that's kind of a tricky one. There are some challenges that come with just being in the federal government in general. So there is a very strict, when you're a federal employee, there's a very strict way that they go about hiring. So you have to have a college degree by time the job, like, pending period closes. So the application period closes, you have to have a degree. So for me, they bid, and I feel so bad for my classmates. They bid all of the jobs that I ended up getting the week before everyone graduated. So there's all of these people getting ready to graduate who aren't eligible for this job. I was, because I already had a degree, so it kind of set me apart there, but that is a piece of it. Um, Challenges with meteorology, because it is competitive. People love weather. It's fun, it's cool. Um, there it is competitive, and so that's where finding ways to set yourself apart really comes in handy. Um, I myself didn't have as much of a difficult time because I was willing to move. That's the other piece. I was willing to go somewhere that not a lot of people wanted to go, which Anchorage, Alaska is incredible and it's beautiful. So I'm always like, what do you mean you don't want to go there? It's amazing. Um, if you're willing to move to somewhere maybe that's a little less desirable, it's easier to get a job. If you're wanting to move to a Boulder, Colorado, it might be a little bit more difficult. So it's having that flexibility. But what's great with the weather service is you can move regularly. If a job opens up in another office, you can bid on it. You still have to go through the application and interview process, but there's nothing that says that you're stuck in your office forever. I am lucky that I got back to the Portland office early. I yeah, I got back really early, thankfully, and so, like, this is my forever office, at least for now, but, the challenges really come down to, like, the timing, and I feel like that's the way it is in so many careers, but I have friends who did have to try for a while, and then, being federal, there's hiring freezes that make things challenging, so it's kind of a mixed bag when it comes to that.
Yeah. I have a question. So now that AI is such a big thing, does AI impact your job at all? And if it does, like, how do you navigate using that within all the technology?
It does, in a way that it is still there's a big push for weather forecasting and AI, a huge push for it, which makes sense, right? Everyone wants to be the first one to be right. And there are some AI models that are doing pretty darn good. Like they're pretty solid. Here locally, one of the things that's unique about the weather service that AI can't really do at this point is we get to do that face to face stuff. I get to go to Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue and sit down with their fire chief and discuss their plans for evacuation orders. I can talk to the governor and say, hey, I know that you're nervous about this. Let's have a discussion about it. So we're really that's kind of where our leg up is at this point, but we use AI. W like, I'm working on a coding script, and I'm like, "I don't know how to do that. Hey, ChatGPT, how do I do this in Google Scripts?" So, it's finding ways to leverage it to work in your in your favor right now, but it's ever evolving. Who knows? Who knows what it's going to be in 5 years? Who knows what it's going to be in 5 months? I mean, it's pretty incredible how fast those things are moving.
Yeah, exactly. And just the evolution of technology. Lucy kind of asked a question to bridge off of that. Lucy asked, do you think that technological advances will increase or decrease the availability of jobs in the future?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be the availability of the jobs, but maybe the type. We'll still be meteorologists, but we're going to be focused more so on issuing watches, warnings, and advisories, maybe, versus is it going to be 72 or 75 degrees that day? Focused more on serving the community versus the nitty-gritty. But there's always going to be need for research. There's always going to be need for tech. There's always going to be a need for that human intervention because we see it regularly here. Models have biases. AI has biases. And so being able to navigate that. So I don't know if it's necessarily the availability, but maybe the exact job description might change.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what was your most memorable weather event you've covered during your career?
Oh man. So it's one I don't like to admit. I think that's why I pause. Um, do we all remember the weather event where we said we were going to get an inch of snow and we got a foot of snow? That was me. That was me, guilty as charged. Yeah, every single computer model was like, "Nah, not snow, not snow, not snow," and then snow. Um, and then was it last year that we had that really big freezing rain event too? That was also me. So, I don't know what it is, but bad weather follows me. So if we're going to get a winter storm and I'm working, it's happening and it's going to be bad. That's what we joke. But yeah, I think that 1 inch of snow to 12 inches of snow was really hard, not just from a forecasting perspective, but also and an ego perspective, right? I got it wrong. But then the next day, you're watching the carnage of buses flipped over. Um, the other one that really sticks in my head was the 2020 Labor Day windstorm. I was dead on. Forecast wind speeds were perfect, but the impacts were tragic. So that was hard in a totally different way.
Wow. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
that can be tough, especially when it's like not you being affected, but other people.
Yeah. And it weighs heavy on you.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're so passionate about our communities and we look at each one of these people and we say, that's my grandma, that's my dad. And when you see people lose their homes, I think about my coworkers right now in the Midwest, and they've just had tornado outbreak after tornado outbreak, and people are have died, and you're just like, "Whoa, this is heavy." And then the meteorology side of me is like, "This is really cool, but it's really bad at the same time." So it's a really hard situation at times.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah, of course.
I have a question. How does NOAA with within research look at how climate change is impacting our environment and like when we look at the increase of tornadoes and hurricanes and the wildfires and
Mhm.
is that does NOAA work with other partners around the questions of climate change?
So we are continually doing research and gathering climate data. Unfortunately, that's all I can kind of speak on at this point when it comes to climate change.
Gotcha. Can you talk a little bit about the other things that NOAA does with regard to protecting fisheries and other environmental protection and impacts? And I know there's a broad range of things that NOAA does, just
Yeah,
besides weather. Like it's a huge umbrella. So and
right.
there's even if you weren't necessarily going to go into meteorology, there might be other careers under that umbrella that you would separate into.
Totally. Yeah, I think you hit a big one is the fisheries component. So we work alongside our mariner partners to establish fishing protocols, regulations. We do a lot of work with marine life testing, on habitat restoration, on water testing to make sure that the marine environment is suitable, or we'll look at like algae blooms. You know, we have people who do, oil spill monitoring and oil spill modeling, which is kind of cool, where they will handle and any kind of like a hazmat type scenario and model it and then determine where those things are going to go and spread, which is a really interesting role. Um, yeah, I mean, NOAA is just like this big encompassing thing with so many components within. We also have things like space weather. That's a component I didn't touch on. And like I said, the NOAA Core is a great opportunity as well, where to learn even more about that. But marine biologists are super important for us. We have a lot of them. NOAA, the non-weather service side of NOAA and outside of fisheries is a little bit more research based versus us and fisheries, which are more like that kind of the application components, if that makes any sense.
Lucy asked, which public weather reporting service is the most accurate for Hillsborough in your experience?
So here's a really interesting component about that that not a lot of people know. So this is like you guys get the skinny, the hidden details of the National Weather Service. So I'm guessing you mean like what phone app or something like that. All of your phone apps, any AccuWeather, anything like that, they get all of their data from us and then they repackage it and send it out. Some have their own computer models that they do run, but all of the data comes from us. So the most accurate reporting service is 100% the National Weather Service at weather.gov. Um, but you can, unfortunately, we don't have an app. But I will say one of our coworkers in the National Weather Service did create a completely free app. Oh, I don't remember the name of it, but it repackages our exact forecast and puts it in a really easy little nugget. And it is awesome. Let me see if I can find it. If I find it, I'll put it into the chat. But so if you want an app on your phone, that's the one I would recommend. And it's completely free. You can't even buy anything on it because there's nothing to buy. So it's great.
I know that the National Weather Service also has a Twitter page that I
We
will
do.
see updates, like really regular updates on Twitter,
Yeah.
from the National Weather Service too, within like the Hillsborough, Beaverton, Portland area.
Yes. Yep. We have our Twitter and our Facebook. All of those are available. I will have to find the name of the app. I will send it to you, Wendy, so that you can share because it's great.
Does NOAA have their own satellite?
We do. We have quite a few satellites actually. So our big ones are GOES 16 and GOES 18, and we're getting ready to launch GOES 19. So there's different types of satellites. There's stationary satellites that stay in one position and then scan. And then there's what we call polar orbitals, which move with the United States. So, like, it'll stay with us the whole way as we rotate around. And then each one of those captures dozens of different types of images, whether it's infrared, visible, and then it does a bunch of these calculations. And I can determine how much ozone is in there because of satellite. It's really cool. But yes, we do. And we have international agreements to get Japanese satellite imagery through Himawari and I believe a Canadian satellite as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
It's about 2 o'clock. So, students, if you have any last minute questions, we can stay on for a little bit.
Mhm.
Feel free to put those in the chat now to make sure they get answered.
And I always say, like, if anyone is interested in this and wants to learn more and wants to have more conversations, I am, like I said, I'm an open book. I'm more than happy to chat further. I know for me, I didn't even really know meteorology was a thing other than television until I was in college. So I'm happy to be able to have the opportunity to chat with y'all.
Rebecca, are you able to put your email or any contact info in the chat maybe for them?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll put
Thank
my
you.
email. That's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of us just because we are shift workers. And I don't think you want to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning at the office. But that's my email. Feel free to shoot me an email at any point in time. We also do tours every once in a while. So if it's something that you're really interested in learning more about, we might be able to schedule that kind of depending on how policy moves about.
And it
So
does
yeah,
look
it's
like Lucy did have a question. Lucy asked,
yeah.
was the big snowstorm you were talking about the one from 8 years ago?
No, this was the one that was like February 22nd, I think, of 2022. Because I was in my house. Yeah, I think it was February 22nd of 2022. And I was working and we've been saying 1 inch of snow. It was solid. And then I got a call from someone up in Clark County and they said, I've got 8 inches of snow on the ground. And I was like, What? No, no way. And then a coworker started calling. So we have weather observers and storm spotters throughout the area. And they started calling, like, yeah, we have like 5 or 6 inches of snow. Then my coworker out in Trout was like, Becca, I have 10 inches of snow. I'm like, oh, no. Okay. Oh, here we go. Let's see how fast I can update this. And that one was hard because Portland International got shut down. SeaTac got every airport got shut down in the Pacific Northwest. It was a mess. It was a mess. And the economy shut down for days because of it. And you can't help but feel guilty for that. But yeah, that was February 22nd.
All those trees piled up together must have been some kind of mystical portent too.
I
Two,
know,
two,
right?
two, two, two. Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you a quick question about pilot weather reports.
Yeah.
Are those something that actually help you out when
Yes.
pilots do PIREPs? Cool.
Yes. I love a PIREP. Um, So, for those who aren't as aware, pilots, when they're flying, if they encounter weather or anything like that, they can send it back and it comes like in this little encoded message to us. And then it also goes to the Aviation Weather Center. So, it helps them identify turbulence, mountain obscuration, or icing so that they can put those into their forecasts. But then for us locally, it helps me determine if I've got things like low level wind shear, which is when my winds are doing this at different speeds, which can cause a lot of disruption. The big things that I love, and you can pass this along to the pilot people, are the bases and the tops of clouds. Those are the big pieces because if I have those, we actually have a climate database that we've done research on and found climatologically then when our ceilings are going to lift and when the fog's going to dissipate if we have the depth,
Oh, that's super cool. I just like
like down
knowing
to the
because I
minute.
like to know
It's really
where
cool.
yeah, that's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. This was
Welcome.
absolutely amazing. We'd love to do more with you in the future. But for
Yeah.
students, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time. It's going to be the evaluation code. See if it goes. So here is the evaluation code. This, please fill it out. This is the way that we track your attendance to show that you showed up today and be able to report that back so that you do get credit for attending today's event. This is also a way for you to provide us feedback on how you thought today's event went, what you learned, what you thought was really cool. Do you want to pursue a career in meteorology or a career in a related field? So I'll go ahead and leave that up for a moment. And then once you fill that out or you're able to scan it, you are welcome to go.
If you do not have a phone to scan the QR code, um, John, I will go ahead and email you the evaluation code. I'll do that in just a minute.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes. They are also available at your schools in your college and career offices. The school to college and career counselors have these as well, or Wendy has all your contact information and she can email them.
Well, and Rebecca, maybe for the next school year, we can work with you on scheduling to do a field trip for the schools to the office and do a tour.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's just touch base and we can see what we can
Yeah.
finagle. Hopefully, we'll have some better guidance moving forward. So, yeah, absolutely. We'd love that.
Yeah. And then for any of the students who attended today,